Hello, lovely souls, and welcome to Emily Whispers. I'm Emily, and I'm so happy you decided to join me tonight. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment and say hello. I love connecting with each of you. If these little moments bring you peace, please like and subscribe so we can share more of them together. Now find your cozy spot. Wrap yourself in a blanket if you like. Take a slow, gentle breath, and let's drift into tonight's story. I woke up on a Saturday night in the middle of autumn, sometime after midnight, because I heard a sound coming from my phone. It was a short, melodic chime I had never heard before. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. My eyes were heavy, and I was not sure if the sound in my ears was real or just some echo from my dream. Then the chime played again, soft but clear, and I realized it was coming from my phone. I never leave my phone close to my bed. I usually keep it charging on my desk near the window, far enough that I have to get up and walk across the room to reach it. That night was no different. I pushed the blanket away, stepped onto the cool floor, and felt a sting of tiredness in my eyes. The clock on my nightstand showed it was just after 12. My head was heavy as I wondered who could be contacting me at that hour. My mind rushed through possibilities of an emergency, but then I remembered this was not my usual ringtone. When I reached the desk, the phone screen was glowing. It showed the green and red icons to accept or decline the call, but where the name or number should have been, there was nothing. Only a blank blue screen lit up the dark room. I hesitated, then touched the green icon and lifted the phone to my ear. I spoke a greeting, but only silence greeted me back. Not total silence, but a low, humming quiet, the kind of sound you hear during a long-distance call before the other voice begins. My skin prickled. I spoke again, asking if someone was there, but still the same hum stretched out for several long seconds. Then the line disconnected on its own. The screen went dark. My pulse quickened as I checked the call history. There was nothing new, no record of an incoming call. My stomach tightened as I stared at the blank list. I told myself it was just a glitch. Phones misbehave sometimes. I set it back on the desk and returned to my bed, trying to calm myself. But the mattress felt cold, and my mind spun with questions. Eventually, after forcing myself to breathe slowly, I drifted into uneasy sleep. The next morning, I woke to gray sky and steady rain outside my window. I felt groggy, but the memory of the night returned instantly. I turned toward my desk, and my phone screen displayed one new voicemail. The timestamp said it was received just after 12, the exact moment the call had ended. A hollow feeling opened in my chest as I tapped the notification. The voicemail came from a blank entry, no number, no contact, only a dash. I pressed play and raised the phone to my ear, expecting silence. Instead, I heard a voice whisper my name. The sound was faint, rough, and strained, as though the speaker had a dry throat or was speaking through static. It said my name again, slowly, drawing out each syllable. I did not recognize the voice. I I could not even tell if it was a man or a woman. Behind it came a faint, watery noise, like liquid shifting inside a pipe. My breath caught as the voice tried to speak more words, but they dissolved into garbled sounds. Then the message ended with sudden silence. I replayed it, staring at the screen as though the glowing display might change. The whisper came again, the wet background noise filling my ears, until it cut off just as abruptly as before. Goosebumps spread along my arms. My thumb moved on its own, deleting the voicemail before I had fully decided. The moment it disappeared, I regretted it. It felt as if I had erased evidence of something I should have kept. I tried to shake off the tension by making coffee and moving through my morning routine. Still, the whisper echoed in my head. I checked the call log again, but there was nothing. I called the automated system from my carrier, but it showed no record of the voicemail. Later in the afternoon, I spoke with a support agent who checked my account. She told me no call had come through at the time I described, and voicemails do not appear without a connected call. Her calm confusion only deepened my unease. If it was impossible, then what had I just heard? That evening, I tried to sleep early, though I could not relax. I kept staring at my phone resting on the desk, its screen black. Every faint sound in my apartment made me alert. Around what felt like the middle of the night, I sat up with my heart pounding. My phone remained still, no chime, no glow. I waited in silence until sleep finally pulled me under. When I woke in the morning, there was no new voicemail, no missed call, nothing at all. My relief felt fragile, as though the quiet could end at any moment. Days have passed since then. I have not received another strange call, but I still think about the voice whispering my name, the sound of water behind it, and the way it vanished without leaving a trace. Sometimes, late at night, I feel my chest tighten as I remember the way it spoke to me. I still keep my phone across the room, sometimes even in the living room. But no matter where it is, I cannot help wondering if I will one night hear that unfamiliar chime again. I was getting ready for bed one night when I heard a faint, low humming coming from somewhere near the living room. It was past midnight, and the rest of my old Boston apartment was silent and still. I turned off the bathroom light, stood there, and listened. My heart rate picked up right away. It was not a loud sound, just a soft, almost musical vibration in the air. I dried my hands on a towel and walked toward the living room, making sure my steps were quiet so I could pick up any other noises. At first, I thought it might be the old radiator, but the heat was not on. I walked around the small sofa, stepped toward the long, antique mirror that hangs on the hallway wall, and stared at my own tired reflection. There was nothing strange at that moment, just my face in the glass, a dim shape from the single lamp I had left on. Still, something about that humming stayed with me. I got a glass of water and went back to my bedroom, trying not to think about it. But the sound bothered me enough that I had trouble sleeping. The next night, I stayed up late again. I was reading on my tablet and realized it was almost 1 in the morning. I felt thirsty, so I got out of bed and headed for the kitchen. The hallway was dark, and I noticed the living room lamp cast a long shadow. As I passed the large mirror, I glanced at my reflection. I had the distinct feeling that something was wrong, like the reflection was lagging a fraction of a second behind me, or was slightly out of focus. I took a few steps closer. The lamp was bright enough to illuminate my shape, but the hallway behind me was dark, so the mirror almost acted like a window into a dim room. I leaned in and peered at my reflection. Then I saw another shape behind me. It was just a vague outline, like the silhouette of a person standing a foot or so back from me. My stomach sank. I froze, my hands still on the doorframe to the kitchen. I felt a cold sweat forming on my forehead. I could not move. Part of me wanted to spin around, but I was terrified I would see someone I did not recognize, or worse, someone who should not be there at all. The shape in the reflection looked tall, maybe taller than me, with a slightly stooped posture, like it was leaning forward. My breath became shallow, and I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stared at the mirror for what felt like a full minute. Then the silhouette seemed to sway a little, as if shifting its weight. I felt my spine tingle. I whipped around, my arms raised slightly, but the hallway was empty. The living room was empty. There was no one there. My hands were shaking, and my teeth were clenched so tight that my jaw ached. I tried to calm down. I told myself I was seeing things, maybe just a trick of the light or a shadow from the furniture. But I could not shake the sense of dread that filled me at that moment. I walked to my bedroom, locked the door behind me, and lay in bed for hours, my eyes wide open, listening to every little sound my old apartment made. The following day, I forced myself to go about my regular routine. I woke up, made coffee, did some work from home, and went for a run. I did not tell anyone about what I thought I saw. I even tried convincing myself it was just my imagination playing games with me because I was tired. Maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me, and that is all it was. But deep down, I knew something did not feel right. My thoughts kept drifting back to that reflection, and how clearly I had seen a shape behind me. I remember the slight motion it made, and how real it looked. That night, I decided I would leave the hallway light on and turn off the living room lamp before going to bed. My plan was to avoid looking directly at the mirror. I figured if the hallway was lit, then the mirror would not reflect the darkness behind me so strongly. It was not a perfect plan, but I was desperate to avoid the fear I had felt the night before. I stuck to my routine. I watched a bit of television, scrolled on my phone, and tried not to think about the reflection. When I finally got up to get a glass of water, I walked quickly. I kept my eyes on the floor the entire time, refusing to look at the mirror. I turned on the kitchen light, filled my glass, and drank. My body still felt tense, and I noticed my fingertips were cold. I heard no odd sounds, and I did not see anything in my peripheral vision. Still, I rushed out of the kitchen, went to my bedroom, and closed the door. My heart was racing again, even though nothing happened. The next few nights went more or less the same. I tried to keep the hallway bright, so I would not see the reflection so clearly. I also started skipping my late-night water runs, choosing to drink a lot of water before bed so I would not wake up thirsty. But sometimes I would still get up around 2 in the morning because my throat felt dry. On one of those nights, I forgot to leave the hallway light on. The living room lamp was on instead, and that was enough to cast my reflection in the mirror once more. As I approached the kitchen, I heard a tiny sound, like a soft piece of fabric brushing against a wall. It might have been the pipes or the old building settling, but my body reacted with a jolt of fear. My hands clenched and my shoulders tensed. I tried telling myself that I was just being paranoid because of the previous incident. That is when I dared to glance at the mirror again. I could see my torso and part of my face. No one else was in the reflection. I exhaled a sigh of relief and turned on the kitchen light. I filled my glass, then looked back at the mirror. That is when I saw it again. The same silhouette, standing just a few inches behind me, with its head tilted as though it was looking at the back of my neck. My legs felt weak, and my throat went dry. I could not breathe. I turned around, and once again, there was nobody there. This time the sight was so vivid that my eyes started watering. I stood there, panting for a few seconds. My entire body trembled, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I whispered some curses under my breath and stumbled to my bedroom. I locked the door, jumped into bed, and tossed and turned for the rest of the night, drenched in sweat. One evening, I decided to face my fear head-on. Around 10, I went to the hallway, turned off all the lights, and stood in front of the mirror with a small flashlight in my hand. I wanted to see if I could figure out any logical explanation for the silhouette. I pointed the flashlight at different angles to see if maybe a coat hanging on a nearby hook or a shadow of a bookshelf could create a weird outline. But everything looked ordinary. My reflection was faint in the darkness, but I did not see any shape behind me. I stayed there for a few minutes, focusing on my breathing. I heard the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the faint sound of traffic from the street below, and the rustle of leaves in the night breeze. No silhouette, no movement, just me in my apartment, trying to act brave. After a while, I turned the lights back on and felt a bit calmer. I made a snack, watched some late-night television, and went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night again, feeling thirsty. I nearly convinced myself to go back to sleep, but I could not. My throat felt parched. I tried to push away the unease in my gut. I stepped out into the hallway, flicked on the light, and approached the kitchen. I kept my eyes down, avoiding the mirror. But halfway to the kitchen, I heard a slight sound. It was brief, like a footstep on the old wooden floor right behind me. My pulse skyrocketed. I started sweating immediately. My knees felt weak. I forced myself to turn around slowly. Nothing. The hallway was empty, just like always. My heart thumped so hard that I felt it in my temples. I looked at the mirror anyway. My reflection was there, but no silhouette. I hurried to the kitchen, got my water, and then rushed back to my room and shut the door. Days passed. I started avoiding that part of the hallway altogether, but it was impossible in my small apartment. One afternoon, I left work early. I bought a heavy blanket, one that was thick and opaque. When I got home, I draped it over the mirror. The material was heavy, and it covered the entire glass surface. I figured this might solve the problem once and for all. That night, I walked through the hallway without feeling nervous. I got my water, glanced at the covered mirror, and felt relieved. I could not see my reflection anymore. I felt like celebrating this small victory. I watched television, relaxed a bit, and went to bed around midnight. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up again. My mouth was dry, and I felt a bit sweaty. I hesitated, but I had no choice. I needed a drink. I headed into the hallway, turned on the light, and saw that the blanket had slipped slightly to one side. A few inches of the mirror were exposed. Maybe I had not secured it properly, or maybe I brushed against it by accident earlier. My gut tightened. I walked over, took a breath, and reached for the blanket to pull it back into place. Then I caught a glimpse of my face in the uncovered part of the glass. Behind my face, there was the silhouette again. That same tall shape, leaning forward. My arms felt weak, and my chest got tight. I almost dropped to my knees. I forced myself to yank the blanket back over the mirror, my breathing heavy and ragged. I stood there, staring at the blanket, not daring to move it again. After a few seconds, I stumbled back to my bedroom. My hands trembled so badly that I felt sick. I locked myself in, lay down in bed, and just stared at the ceiling, listening to my heart hammer in my chest. I have not moved out of this apartment. I am still here. I still have that same hallway, that same mirror. Most nights, I keep the heavy blanket draped over it. Sometimes I check to make sure it is secure before I go to bed. I try not to think about it. But every once in a while, I wake up thirsty, and I have to go out there. My heart pounds, and the hair on my arms stands on end. I have not seen the silhouette lately, but I feel it. It is like an unspoken presence behind that blanket. I do not tell anyone about it. Maybe I will move out one day, or maybe I will get used to living with this gnawing sense that someone or something is watching me from inside the glass. For now, I do what I can to ignore it and carry on. But every time I catch my reflection anywhere in this place, I brace myself for the possibility that I am not alone. And deep down, I suspect that presence is still there, silently waiting. Last Friday night, I was in the underground parking garage of the hospital where I work, and something happened that I still cannot fully explain. I am a practical guy, and I do not scare easily. But when I heard that voice echo through the concrete corridors, I felt a chill rush through my entire body. I want to tell you what happened, step by step, without dressing it up. I need to get this off my chest. I work in a large hospital in downtown Chicago. The place has a sub-basement used for parking and for storing old medical equipment, boxes of files, and spare supplies. It is not exactly welcoming. The walls are gray, the ceiling is low, and the overhead fluorescent lights hum with a low frequency whenever you turn them on. There is a constant smell of disinfectant and car exhaust. When you speak or move down there, your voice bounces off the walls like it is searching for a way out. That night, around 8, I realized I had forgotten to double check a valve on an oxygen tank in the storage area. The hospital had been doing a routine inventory earlier that day, and my supervisor had asked me to make sure everything was properly sealed before I left. Normally, I would have done it right away, but I got caught up with a patient. By the time I remembered, almost everyone else had gone home. I could have left it for the next morning, but I wanted to be thorough. So I took the service elevator down to the garage level, then walked to the far set of stairs that led to the sub-basement. I had my car parked there too, so I figured I would grab my gym bag from the trunk on my way back up. I stepped into the sub-basement, and the lights were already on. That struck me as odd, because usually they are on timers that shut off after a while. Still, I did not think much of it. I headed over to my car first, unlocked the trunk, and grabbed my bag. Then, just out of habit, I checked to make sure I had locked the car doors. After I closed the trunk, I heard it. A faint voice, like it was coming from behind one of the rows of parked cars. It said, "Hey, is anyone there?" in a low, distant tone. For a split second, I thought it was the echo of my own movements, but I had not spoken. I stood there, my hand on the trunk, the overhead light of the garage shining on my hands. My heart skipped a beat, and I remember thinking, did I just imagine that? I shut the trunk, and the sound of it closing echoed around me. I stood still, holding my breath for a moment, listening for any movement. The sub-basement was silent, except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. I was sure I had heard someone call out, but I could not see anyone. The place is mostly open, with a few concrete pillars, some stacked boxes, and parked vehicles scattered around. If there was another person there, I should have been able to spot them pretty quickly. "Hello," I called out. My voice bounced off the concrete walls. "Hello, hello, hello." Then, after a pause, I heard something respond. It sounded like a distorted version of my own voice, but the words were jumbled. Maybe it was the echo, but it was not matching the exact timing of my own echo. It came from somewhere near the back, like behind the storage shelves, where extra cleaning supplies and dusty boxes are kept. I felt a creeping sense of unease. My scalp tingled, and I gripped my gym bag in my hand, as if it could defend me from whatever was out there. I forced myself to walk forward. I told myself I was just hearing the echoes in a weird way, and that the sub-basement's acoustics can sometimes play tricks on you. I had experienced echoes down there before, but never like this. I stepped around a parked ambulance, trying not to let my footsteps make too much noise on the concrete. Each time my shoe made contact with the floor, the echo went in several directions, creating that faint, hollow sound that lingered too long. As I approached the far corner, I noticed a flicker in one of the lights overhead. It flashed for a second, leaving that afterimage in my vision. Then I heard the voice again. It came out of the shadows, repeating something close to what I had just said earlier, but out of order. It sounded like it was trying to mimic me, but got stuck halfway. I heard, "Hello, Annie is there." The words were scrambled, as if someone had recorded me and hit the wrong playback speed. My hand started sweating. I felt my shirt clinging to my back, and my pulse picked up. I looked around, trying to see if maybe there was a speaker or some old equipment that could be causing these sounds. The sub-basement has old pipes and an outdated intercom system that nobody uses anymore. For a moment, I wondered if the system had gotten stuck or malfunctioned, but I could not see any speaker that would create a sound that clear. I walked up to the chain link fence that separates the parked cars from the maintenance supply area. Beyond the fence, there is a small corridor leading to the locked storage room. I did not see any movement. Everything was still. I listened carefully, holding my breath. All I heard was the buzz of electricity. Then I spoke again. Is somebody here? Hello. The echo came back. Somebody here? Hello. But after a second, I heard an extra voice layered on top, faint, but definitely there, almost stumbling over the same words. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. The place smelled damp and stale, and my nostrils flared as I tried to stay calm. My throat went dry. I told myself it had to be an echo, but I had never heard an echo that repeated the same phrase more than once. I took another step forward, and that is when I realized the voice was coming from multiple directions at the same time. It was not just bouncing in one corridor. It seemed like it was popping up in 3 or 4 places. It was faint, but I could sense it circling around me. I felt a sudden wave of claustrophobia, like I could not get enough air. My mind raced. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe pipes in the walls, or some kind of weird resonance. I stood there, scanning the area. Nothing moved. All the cars were still, and there was no one else in sight. I decided I had had enough. I still needed to check the oxygen tank, but my nerves were on edge. I hurried toward the back wall, where the storage area was located. It is a large, caged-in space with rows of shelves. I used my key card to open the gate, found the tank I was supposed to check, and verified that the valve was not leaking. Everything looked okay, so I shut the gate. My hand was trembling, though. I could hear my breathing echo in my ears. Then, without warning, I heard a loud sound. It sounded like something heavy had been knocked over behind me. I spun around and stared into the rows of parked cars. The noise echoed, then died out. I squinted and saw a stack of old filing cabinets leaning against a pillar. One of them was rocking slightly, like it had just been bumped. I did not see anyone around it, though. My heart pounded. I whispered, "What the hell?" And then the echo picked it up. Hell, hell. But I also heard a warped version. Heel. It was slight, but it made the hair on my arms stand up. I could not handle it anymore. I locked the storage gate, possibly forgetting to double-check something else. I figured I could fix it tomorrow. I needed to get out of there. I retraced my steps, moving faster now, practically jogging across the concrete floor. My shoes squeaked, and I heard the squeaks echo back. At the same time, there were fragments of the voice, calling out words I had said earlier. Someone there. Hello. What the hell? It was like the place was recording me and spitting back random pieces of my own speech. As I passed my car, I considered jumping in and driving out. But I realized I would have to open the heavy garage gate from inside the security booth. That booth is on the upper level, next to the hospital entrance. I did not want to risk fumbling with the controls if that strange voice was still following me. So I decided to use the stairs to get up to the main lobby. Once I reached the bottom of the stairwell, I looked back one last time. The sub-basement stretched out in front of me like some big, concrete maze. The fluorescent lights flickered. I thought I saw a shape moving between cars, but it was probably just my own reflection bouncing off a window. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My heart was racing, and my chest felt tight. I remember the sound of my footsteps on the metal steps and the echo that chased me up. Every time I landed on a step, it felt like the entire stairwell vibrated. When I was about halfway, I heard a final echo. "Hey, any some there?" The words were all scrambled, but they sounded weirdly close, like they were right at the bottom of the stairs. I did not look back again. I did not want to see anything else. I reached the door to the main floor hallway, swung it open, and stumbled into the fluorescent glow of the corridor. The door hissed shut behind me. I stood there, catching my breath, feeling sweat trickle down my neck. I tried to compose myself, but my hands were shaking so badly that I had trouble pulling the door fully closed. I left it propped open for a second, then forced myself to shut it tight. I realized I had not turned off the lights in the sub-basement. I also was not sure if I had left the storage area in the right configuration, but I had zero intention of going back. My body was on alert, and my instincts screamed at me to get out of the building. I hurried across the empty lobby, past the silent reception desk. There were only a few security cameras mounted on the ceiling, and I felt like they were watching me run around like a scared fool. I kept imagining the voice drifting up through the vents. I got outside into the cool night air and stood there for a moment. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm myself. The city lights flickered, and the streets were mostly empty at that hour. I thought about going to the security office to report what happened, but I knew I would not be able to explain it in a way that sounded normal. "Hey," I heard an echo messing up my words down. There was not going to earn me anything but weird looks. So I decided to call it a night. I walked to a nearby bus stop and caught the next bus home. That night, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured the sub-basement, the hum of the lights, the shadowy rows of cars, and that mangled echo of my own voice repeating bits and pieces of what I said. My pulse would start racing again, and I would toss and turn for hours. Eventually, I gave up on rest and just stared at the ceiling, waiting for morning. When I finally came back to work the next day, everything felt off. I took the elevator straight to my floor, avoiding the garage and the sub-basement. I did not even want to park down there. I ended up leaving my car at home, which was unusual for me. But I just could not bring myself to face that empty, echoing space. At around 10 in the morning, my supervisor asked me to finalize the check on the storage area. I told him everything was fine and that I had verified it. I lied through my teeth. I was not ready to tell him I had left in a hurry after hearing whatever I heard. For the rest of that day, I kept waiting for someone to mention a strange noise in the sub-basement or flickering lights or something. But nobody said anything. Business went on as usual. By the time lunch rolled around, I started to question whether I had overreacted. Maybe stress and fatigue made me jump at an echo. But deep down, I know what I heard. I know it was not a normal echo. Whatever was repeating my words was not doing it right. It sounded like something trying to speak, but not quite understanding what the words meant. It has been almost a week now, and I still will not go down to that sub-basement alone. If I need to check anything down there, I make sure at least one of the maintenance guys comes with me. I have not said why, and they do not ask. They probably think I am just being cautious. But the truth is, I do not want to hear that voice again. I cannot handle that feeling of being surrounded by echoes that do not match up. It felt like the sub-basement was alive, and it was using my own words against me. That is the story. There is no big revelation or dramatic conclusion. I did not see a ghost, and I did not find any hidden speaker. I just heard something that should not have been there, something that twisted my voice and fed it back to me from all directions. It rattled me so badly that I ran out and left everything on. I still have not gone back to double check that valve, but I know what I heard, and I am sure I will never forget that scrambled echo calling out pieces of my own words. It is in my head now. Every time I walk by the doorway to the stairs, I feel a tingle in my spine. I think about that stillness and that broken repetition, and I remember how it felt when I realized I was alone, but not really alone, in a dark place that should not have had any voice at all. I just hope I never have to hear that sound again. I still remember the first time I saw the old, abandoned sanatorium. It was a sprawling brick building on a hill overlooking a deserted stretch of road in rural Pennsylvania. The chain link fence around it was rusted and had gaps, and the main gate was chained shut, but easy to climb. I noticed broken windows, crumbling brickwork, and tall weeds growing through cracks in the courtyard. Something about it pulled me in right away. I could not ignore the urge to see what was inside, no matter how run down it looked. I told my friend Leo about it, and we decided to check it out that same week. On a late afternoon in October, we drove my small car to the edge of the property. I parked behind some overgrown bushes so no one would see us. The air felt crisp, and the sky was a dull, overcast gray. I heard crows cawing, and each sound made me feel more aware of our surroundings. The fence was easy to get over, and after a few minutes, we stood near the main entrance of the sanatorium. The door was a heavy, dark wood slab with a large, ornate knocker that was green with age. It looked like someone had tried to pry it open a long time ago. Leo pushed on it, and it gave way with a low groaning sound. We stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was a stale, medicinal smell. My nose twitched, and I tried not to breathe too deeply. The floor was covered in dust and debris, and old, broken furniture lay scattered around. The large, arched windows were still there, but they were covered in grime and did not let in much light. The space felt huge, even though most of it was empty. My footsteps made a soft, crunching sound on the dusty floor, and that noise made me feel like I was not supposed to be there. Leo nudged my shoulder and pointed to the right. There was a narrow hallway leading away from the main lobby. It had a single, bare bulb hanging from the ceiling at the far end, but it was not lit. The hallway walls had peeling paint, and parts of the ceiling looked like they might collapse. I could see water stains and cobwebs overhead. I felt uneasy, like I was walking into someone's forgotten nightmare. We passed a few doors that were either locked or blocked by fallen debris. One had a sign that said director's office, but when I tried the handle, it would not budge. We kept going. The deeper we went, the darker it got. I used my phone flashlight to see. The beam lit up a broken wheelchair, scattered medical charts, and a desk that had been tipped on its side. Leo stayed close behind me. He did not say much, but I could sense his tension. His breathing was shallow, and he glanced over his shoulder every few seconds. Eventually, we reached a small room with a single metal bed frame in the center. The ceiling light was broken, so it was dim, only lit by our flashlights. On the bed frame, there was an old patient chart. The cover was torn, and it looked like it had water damage. I picked it up. The pages were yellow and stained, with handwriting so messy I could barely read it. I saw random dates, incomplete sentences, and mentions of nightly treatments. Some lines described strange noises at night, like whispers coming from the walls. Another part mentioned patients talking to people who were not there. I felt a chill run through my arms when I saw the words whispers in the walls. I tried to imagine the scenario, a patient alone at night, hearing something that sounded like a person speaking, only there was nobody there. My heartbeat sped up. I handed the chart to Leo so he could see for himself. He frowned at the messed up writing. He squinted at a passage that described a feeling of being watched in the corridors. Then he closed the chart and handed it back. He did not say a word. We heard something from down the hall, like a distant metallic sound. It sounded like a metal tray being dropped, but it came in a slow, repeating pattern. I snapped my head up. Leo looked at me, and I saw the same question on his face. Who else could be in here? The rhythmic sound continued for a few seconds. Then it stopped. My stomach twisted in knots. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind knocking something over. The building was old, and there were plenty of damaged areas. I figured maybe a breeze was coming in from a broken window, causing something to fall back and forth. But I did not feel any breeze. The air was still and cold. I put the chart in my backpack and gestured for Leo to follow me. We walked toward the direction of the sound, our footsteps slow and careful. My palms were sweaty, and I kept my phone flashlight aimed ahead of us. The corridor opened into another large section of the sanatorium. This one had an assortment of old medical equipment, cabinets, and gurneys pushed against the walls. Some cabinets were dented or rusted, and a few had doors hanging off the hinges. The place smelled like rust and damp decay. Our flashlights caught drifting particles of dust floating in the air. We checked a few of the cabinets out of curiosity. Most were empty. One had a stack of moldy linens. Another had a single, cracked glass bottle that looked old and covered in dust. I heard a faint dripping sound somewhere, like water leaking through the roof. I felt my shoulders tense up with every step, worried that we might see a rat or something worse. But there was nothing. No sign of life at all, just musty air and decaying equipment. Suddenly, one of the cabinet doors swung open. It made a harsh, metallic sound that echoed in the empty space. I jumped back, almost dropping my phone. Leo let out a sharp gasp. The door just stood there, wide open. There was no draft, no wind, no movement in the air. But the cabinet door had swung open on its own. My heart pounded in my ears. I clenched my flashlight so hard my hand started to cramp. I quickly stepped forward and slammed the cabinet shut. The door made a loud metallic sound, and I felt the vibration in my arm. I did not want to stand there any longer. Leo and I exchanged one terrified glance, and we both knew we needed to leave. We walked fast, retracing our steps toward the main entrance. My mind raced with questions I could not answer. I kept thinking about the patient chart. Those lines about whispers would not leave my head. We got out of the sanatorium and stumbled into the open air. I breathed in as deeply as I could, even though the air still felt heavy and cold. We ran back to my car without saying anything. Once we were inside, Leo exhaled loudly and muttered something about never going back. I nodded, turned the key, and drove out of there. My hands shook on the steering wheel until we reached the main road. That night, I could not sleep well. My body felt restless, and my thoughts kept drifting back to the sound of that cabinet door and the strange metallic noise. I thought I heard faint whispers in my bedroom, but I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Around 3 in the morning, I finally dozed off. My dreams were chaotic. I saw long, dark corridors that looked like the sanatorium hallways. I heard voices echoing my name. I jolted awake, with sweat running down my forehead. My t-shirt clung to my skin, and my chest rose and fell with each shallow breath. The next morning, I felt groggy. My mind was cloudy. I sent Leo a text to see how he was doing. He wrote back that he was fine, but had not slept much either. I did not mention my nightmares. I just said I was glad we got out before anything worse happened. I spent most of the day trying to push the whole experience out of my mind. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that rusted cabinet door swinging open. My neck tensed, and my stomach turned. I tried to watch some television to distract myself, but I kept replaying the events in my head. The second night after our visit was worse. I had another dream where I wandered the same corridors alone. My flashlight flickered, and I heard the rhythmic metallic sound echoing in the distance. Then I heard whispered voices calling my name. My heart pounded in the dream, and I felt my hand shaking. I saw a faint, shadowy figure at the end of the hall, but I could not tell who or what it was. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat again. I threw my covers aside and sat on the edge of my bed, breathing hard and trying to calm down. The following days, I started to feel jumpy and distracted. I made mistakes I never used to make. My boss asked if something was wrong. I just said I had not been sleeping well. I did not want to explain the whole sanatorium story. I figured nobody would believe me anyway. Leo and I talked a few times, and he said he was also getting weird feelings. He told me he felt like the building was stuck in his head. We agreed not to go back there, but we could not shake the feeling that the place had somehow clung to us. Every night, I lay in bed, dreading the moment when I would close my eyes. I tried sleeping pills, but they only made my mind hazy. I still dreamt of those corridors, that empty cabinet, the metallic noise. Sometimes in my dreams, I caught glimpses of the patient chart's pages, words scrawled in the same messy handwriting, telling me to listen. In those moments, my heartbeat would spike, and I would wake up gasping for air. One evening, I decided to open that patient chart again. I pulled it out of my backpack, which I had dumped in my closet. It smelled musty, like the sanatorium. I felt a wave of nausea just holding it. I turned the brittle pages carefully, shining a small lamp on them so I would not strain my eyes. The text was mostly unreadable, but I saw references to isolation wards, cold spots in the halls, and inexplicable noises. The patient who was the subject of the chart seemed deeply unsettled. They mentioned being afraid to sleep, complaining that they heard voices in their room. I felt my arms trembling as I recognized the same kind of fear I was experiencing now. I thought about throwing the chart away or burning it, but some part of me hesitated. I feared destroying it might make the situation worse. I know that sounds irrational, but I could not help it. My nerves were frayed, and I was not thinking clearly. I ended up shoving the chart back into a drawer and slamming it shut. My stomach churned, and I could feel a cold sweat forming on my forehead. That night, I heard a sound in my living room around midnight. It sounded like a piece of furniture being dragged across the floor. My heart raced, and I got out of bed to check. I flicked on every light as I walked through my small apartment. Everything looked normal. No furniture had moved. Nothing was out of place. My hands were shaking when I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen. I drank it in one gulp and realized my breathing was ragged. I forced myself to take slow, deep breaths until I felt somewhat calmer. The next few nights followed the same pattern. Nightmares, strange noises, a constant feeling of unease. I would jolt awake with the sensation that someone was standing over me or whispering in my ear. I would check my bedroom door, the corners of the room, the hallway, and find nothing. I would try to tell myself it was all in my head. After a week of this, I called Leo and asked him if he was experiencing the same thing. He admitted he was still feeling on edge, but insisted that the worst of it seemed to be behind him. He told me to relax, and that maybe my mind was more sensitive to the place than his. I got mad at him for dismissing how intense it felt. He apologized, but did not know what else to say. I started to consider going back to the sanatorium, just to see if there was something I could set right or figure out. The idea of returning made my stomach turn, but I was desperate. I thought maybe I could uncover more about the place, why it was abandoned, who wrote that chart, and what was causing the weird experiences. But every time I pictured myself stepping into that dark corridor, I felt a sudden spike of panic. My mouth went dry, and my heartbeat raced. One night, I dreamt again about the cabinet opening by itself. In the dream, I stood there frozen while the door swung outward with a deafening metallic sound. I felt like I was suffocating. Then a voice whispered my name right behind my ear. I spun around and woke up drenched in sweat. My throat was dry, and my pillow felt cold. I am still stuck with these nightmares. Every time I close my eyes, that place returns to me. I see the dust-covered halls, the rusted gurneys, the faint light from my phone scanning across the walls. I hear that metallic noise echoing in my mind, like a distant reminder of something I cannot escape. My body jolts awake again and again, my heart pounding so hard it hurts. I have considered seeing a therapist, but I am afraid they will think I am making it up or overreacting. I cannot shake the feeling that something latched onto me that day in the sanatorium. I do not know what it is. I do not have any proof, aside from the nightmares and the notes in that old patient chart. There are no bruises on my skin, no actual injuries, no direct signs. Yet the fear is real. It is a clench in my stomach, a wave of nausea, a rush of adrenaline whenever I remember the sound of metal doors opening by themselves. I keep telling myself it will pass if I just wait. But it has been a while, and the dreams have not stopped. They come in waves, leaving me drained and sweaty. During the day, I fight the urge to look over my shoulder or check my closet. At night, I do everything possible to fall asleep, but nothing works for long. I lie there, my mind drifting back to that abandoned sanatorium, wondering if there is more hidden inside those walls. Every little sound in my apartment makes my heartbeat jump. Every small draft of air against my neck sets me on edge. Leo does not want to talk about it much anymore. He says he has moved on, and maybe he has. But for me, those few hours inside that building changed something. I still picture the old patient rooms, the corridors stretching out into darkness, and the broken windows letting in that gloomy light. I cannot forget how the cabinet door swung open by itself, how the sound filled my ears, and how a chill ran down my spine in that moment. It all felt so physical, so immediate, and so impossible to dismiss. I do not know what happens next, but I cannot keep living with these sleepless nights. Part of me wonders if I should go back and face it, maybe close whatever door I opened. Another part of me wants to pretend it never happened, to toss the chart in the trash and move on. Neither option gives me any sense of relief. Right now, I am just sitting here, my heart pounding, the memory still fresh, waiting for the next night to fall. And I know when I close my eyes, I will hear those voices again, echoing in the darkness, reminding me of a place I wish I had never found. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight, lovely souls. I hope this story brought you a moment of calm and curiosity. I'd love to know what part of the story stayed with you the most. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue exploring these quiet moments together. Now, take one last deep, gentle breath. Get cozy and let the calm of the night carry you softly until we meet again.